Hi, Macy.
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me? Hi, Kate. Can you hear me?
Macy, are you on?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me? I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. Kate, I've went ahead and made you host for the meeting.
Hey, Kate, you're muted. If you can.
Miles, and I got medium, and oh my goodness. So I'm going to start it sitting out here. Okay. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yep. Hear you, Barb.
Hi, Andrew. Thank
Hi
you,
there.
Kate. I couldn't figure out how to unmute it. So I can't see at all who's on the meeting except for Andrew, myself, Kate, and the town. So Kate, can you tell me if we have
Barb,
quorum?
you should be unmuted.
Can you hear me, Kate?
I can hear you.
Thanks, Andrew.
This is
Okay,
Ron. I can hear you.
Thanks, Ron. Kate, can you tell me if we have quorum? Because I'm just not, I can't see like who's on it.
Looks like I think we've got Scott, Ron,
Great.
Danielle, Catherine Valen, myself, you, Barb, Kate. I think we've got a quorum.
Barb, are you still having problems? You're showing as unmuted.
So I can,
Kate,
I think everybody can hear me now. Hopefully you can hear me better here. Can you hear me, Kate? Because I think everybody else can.
Kate might not have audio. I'll text her.
Okay.
Hey, Kate, can you hear me? She doesn't have audio.
That's what it is, because I can hear you guys and I can see a couple people. I'm gonna pop open.
Sorry, I got my technical issue fixed. Sorry.
Thank you. It looks like it sounds like, because Andrew said who's there, that we have quorum. So call the meeting to order at 6:03, and Kate, would you call the roll?
Yes. Ron Mitchell,
Here. Here.
I did want to say that Steve Carreau will not be here this evening. Andrew Dewart,
Here.
Steve Roundtree,
Here.
Scott Papage,
Here.
Catherine Valen,
Here.
Danielle Kraus,
Here.
Barb Hart,
Here.
Rusty Corvalin.
Is she there?
I see her. Trustee Corvalin?
I'm here. Can you hear
Okay,
me?
thank you. Now I can hear you. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Kate. And let's start with, sorry. I printed everything out so I would have it with me this evening. Are there any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Hearing and seeing none. Are there any? Nope, sorry. Is there any public comment on non-agenda items? Do we have any members?
I need to
of the
call roll
public?
call on the consent card.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's
Go
all
ahead.
right. All right, thank you. Ron Mitchell? Or actually, I'm sorry, I need a motion to approve your consent and then I'll call roll
That's
call.
what I was.
Sorry,
Okay.
yeah, we need a motion first. Sorry, everything is dinging and he's not working. I'm sorry.
I know, and I have two
settled.
computers
I
going. So
apologize.
it's hard to follow. I would be looking for a motion on to approve the consent agenda.
I move we
Motion to-
approve the consent agenda.
Hey, thank you. Second?
Second.
Yeah, I heard Steve Roundtree, thank you.
Thanks, Steve. And Kate, would you call the roll?
Yes. Ron Mitchell?
Yes.
Andrew Dewart?
Yes.
Steve Roundtree?
Yes.
Scott Papage?
Yes.
Catherine Vallon,
Yes.
Danielle Kraus,
Yes.
Barb Hart,
Yes.
Trustee Corvallin.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Now I would ask if there is any public comment on any non-agenda items. Do we have any members of the public this evening?
Yes, I see one member of the public on.
Okay, does anyone have any public comment? Hearing and seeing none. Let's move into the first item. And let's see, Kate, are you introducing? Or who, I'm sorry, is it?
Yes, yes, I will introduce
Thank you.
and then hand it off to the grant applicants that have joined us this evening. Thank you all for joining us. I'll keep it brief. At the last meeting, you created some new guidelines, so it made it really helpful to run this fund round with these individuals that have come to us for funding for events out of our special event and our traffic and safety funding. We asked that all events that were going to be planned during the spring or summer come at one time so that you could make a great decision about what and make sure that we had enough money for the full year and all people that would want to have events throughout the year. And so I'm hopeful that this is a good start to a good new process for us. You'll see tonight there were applicants that were received for the following summer events. We have the Fourth Friday Art Walk, and they're requesting $1,000 from Special Event Fund for Marketing. Party in the Peaks is also requesting $1,000 for special event for marketing and production. Netherlands Farmers Market is coming for $3,350 for traffic and safety funding, and Ned Jazz and Wine is coming for $1,000 from special event and $1,000 from traffic and safety. There is $8,000 available in special event funding and $19,050 available in traffic control funding. These projects are approved as part of the 2020. I just realized that there's a typo in there. That is not how much money that is left in traffic control, and I'll get that number to you. So the $8,000 is what is available in special event funding, but there is less available in traffic control due to the funds we moved around. So I will get you that number here in a second. And I will also give you the number of if you fund everything, because I know that's typically a question you had. If you fund everything, what the levels will be. I'll get that for you as well. After the presentations and questions. So let's start it off. So the questions for the board, is does the board approve funding for these different events? And then I've included the possible motions should you choose to go either way. So we'll start with the Fourth Friday Art Walk, if they'd like to say a few words.
Great, thank you. Susan, are you on? I'm going to walk down because I was trying to be down there so Susan could speak with you as well.
I thought I had seen her, but I don't.
Yeah, she was on.
Oh,
are you there?
now I see.
Okay, sorry, I'm not used to being on these meetings.
No, we see you. Thank you for being here.
Okay, so Fourth Friday, we did it last year at the Caribou Shopping Center, and I thought it was a success, at least for what I saw at the brewery. Very nice brewing. We'd love to keep it up. I thought we brought people over to our shopping center and got them walking around and supporting our local businesses here in the center. So we're asking for the grant to just further advertise it for the summer. And what it entails is having artists at the individual businesses and at Very Nice, we have live music. We'll have an artist on the sidewalk. We also pulled in the Honey Guy and Sylvie's Baked Goods to be on the sidewalk and just try to get things for people to come out and see and do and purchase.
Right. And at the shopping center, just to add a little bit of information, there are currently 26 different tenants in the shopping center, and all of them are invited to participate in this event. Not all of them do, but quite a few of them do, especially the retail stores, the brewery, the restaurants participate in this, and it does bring a lot of business into the shopping center. The marketing plan is actually to include 4 publications and get the information out there in a lot of different ways, including Coal Creek Canyon, Gilpin County, Allens Park, and Nederland.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to Party in the Peaks. If someone would like to speak on that for a couple minutes.
Hi, my name is Liz McGuffey. I'm on the board for Nederland Farmers Market. And so we have come today with, I hope that we've done this right. We do have slides, Kate, and I don't know, I sent them to you as an attachment, but I also sent, I could also share my screen if you can make me co-host.
So you should be able to just share your screen. There should be a button at the bottom where you can share.
Okay, less familiar with WebEx. and
Yeah.
Tomorrow,
So there is a button by, I believe it's down by the mute in the video. There should be a share.
Yep, it's throwing me into my settings. Anybody done this recently enough that they anybody know what I need to change in my settings?
Who's running it from town? Is it Macy?
No, it's me, but I have so much up on my screen and I need some of that's why it's
No,
hard
that's
for
fine.
me
I
to
just
share
wanna-
it.
I just
I'm
wanted
so
to
sorry
know-
about that.
It's telling me to open my.
Let me see what I
Steph,
can
have
do
you-
here. Let me,
Steph, have you done it before?
I can share it. Let me see what I can do here. Let me
Okay,
see.
sorry.
No,
making me-
don't apologize. Let me see.
It's
what I
just
can
making me close everything and reopen to do it. Kip, you can't do it, can you? I have to close WebEx and go all the way out, which I can do if you want to.
Let me check.
If you want to do,
Let
if you
me
want to
just see
do
if I can do it right now here.
NetJazz first, I could go out and come in.
Oh, come on, you have to go first.
Team effort.
Do you see the little screen at the bottom, Liz?
I think I
I
have it.
know, but it's
Okay,
making.
I'm pulling it up right now. It's just
You're
taking
the
me a
best.
second, but
Thank
here
you
it
so
comes.
much. I appreciate you. Woohoo! Look at that. I did that whole slide. Just kidding.
Sorry, it's
While
taking
this
a
is
minute.
coming up, it's okay. While it's coming up, let me just say, I know that I'm pretty sure everybody on the call today is quite familiar with Nederland's Farmers Market and how we're right there seated in the middle of the DDA, and we are big fans and appreciate the long-term partnership that we've had with Downtown Development Authority. I think our request is fairly straightforward. So this year we're doing a total of 2 festival markets. And so our summer festival is happening in July. So that's what we're here for $1,000 of support for that effort. And then in addition, we've put into the security request, we're asking for some additional funds, both for the event, for the Party in the Peaks event, and also for our regular farmers market for some traffic security and sort of management of flow in the DDA to support not only our farmers market, but also all of our neighbors that are running their businesses at the same time. So as a reminder, I know you all know that Nederland Farmers Market really creates tax revenue. We have a lot of locals who come into town for Nederland Farmers Market, perhaps some even who come in on a Sunday when they might try to avoid some of the busyness in town. We are supportive of new and entrepreneurial business owners from Nederland and the area. And we really think that we are developing an exciting, fun community event on Sundays in the summer. And I hope you all agree with that. The market has been getting bigger. It's been getting more fun. We have played a critical role through COVID, and we're excited to be part of the community. And of course, we not only attract community dollars, but we also attract folks who are coming through town or even come up specifically to be part of one of our festivals. So we're attracting some tourist business and other surrounding areas. And then, of course, the last thing is that we work very hard to collaborate, not only with our DDA neighbors, but also with other nonprofits in town. We are always offering a free booth to other nonprofits. You probably are aware that the fire department is a regular part of our events and do their Hatch Chili fundraiser there. And so from that perspective, we feel like Nederland Farmers Market is part of the local fabric. You probably are familiar with our mission. It's not only to bring good food into the community, but also to be an outlet for local business and local agriculture as well. And we have some exciting plans in that arena. I don't want to take time today about that, but I hope we get to talk to you all about that. We do have, these are our summer dates, since we're only talking about summer here. We only listed, I made the assumption that August is the end of summer and September is the beginning of fall. So our summer dates, 2 in May, 2 in June, 2 in July, one of which is Party in the Peaks, and 2 in August. And we are just, as always, grateful for the partnership and hope to be able to come back to you to talk about the fall market as well. And to that end, we are requesting support both through the special events, $1,000 towards the Party in the Peaks event, and then also, as delineated in our application, additional funds both for Party in the Peaks and for our regular summer markets to manage traffic and parking and security through those events to bring as many people as possible into the area without disturbing our neighbors as well.
Thank you so much. All right, Ned, Jazz, and Wine, please. I think I saw Stephanie.
Yes, hello.
Hello.
Thanks for inviting me back. Last year, the DDA was a critical component, me being able to pull this festival off, not knowing what it would be like. Last year, we had 600 people sell out, fantastic time despite the rain, and there will be no rain this year. This year, we'll have 850 people in attendance, and we'll have 36 booths versus 25 booths. I have confirmed all of the vendors, all of the music, and all of my advertising plan. The $1,000 is a request to help subsidize. I will be spending far more than $1,000 for equipment rental with the production of this event, as well as the promotions, advertising, boosts, etc. That was one breakdown of my $1,000 request. And with vendors, I hired somebody to do my vendor management. And there is an expense because of that field to make sure that the vendors do not harm Chipeta Park. So I have vendor transit to bring them on and off the field safely. So that $1,000 to help subsidize equipment rental, marketing, and vendors. The other $1,000, as was noted, is for traffic and security/safety. It looks like my calculations on the application, it will be about $800 for police, even though it's just an 850-person event. So this will go towards subsidizing that, the signage, both directional and for safety and parking, as well as with the traffic control, having a flagger or two along Lakewood Drive, having parking attendants at the parking lots that have been designated for Ned Jazz Wine, and making sure they're not, the Ned Jazz Wine people aren't taking over the public parking, because still it's a wonderful Saturday for everyone to enjoy in Nederland. The event, because it's in Chipeta, brings traffic through Caribou Village Shopping Center, as well as downtown. And the event ends this year at 5 p.m. So there will be a deluge of people coming out and want to go downtown and into the shopping center to eat and drink after the event. And those are my 2 requests. Thank you so much for your time.
Great, thank you, Stephanie. And Kate, that is all of the requests we have this evening. It looks like, well, let's have board discussion. So for board discussion, because I do believe that there are some conflicts of interest on our board, I just wanted to raise that question. I have a conflict of interest and should not be voting on Caribou Village because our business is in Caribou Village. As well, for Farmers Market, I believe that Tanya is a vendor and Ron owns the property. And if you're talking about parking, I'm not sure if Ron is the person that you're paying for parking, but that would be a conflict. So I think we need to be very cautious approving funding with people that might benefit financially from anything to do with any of the events. So I'm going to abstain from voting on the one. I don't think we can wrap it all into just one big vote of approvals. I think that we have to be cautious about how we're doing that as board members for the approvals. So the first one, well, I guess, are there any board questions for anyone about any of the events before we move into opening it up for public comment? I see that Kathleen has her hand raised and I want to recognize that. I'm just,
Perfect.
I want to be
Thanks.
very cautious to make sure that we're following all the restrictions.
Perfect. And in your packet, you'll see that the motions are done individually. So that should be easy for everyone to do. It was not meant to be lumped together. So
Hey,
I'm happy to move.
this is Tanya. I have a different opinion that Barb does regarding conflict of interest. Do you guys hear me?
Yes, thank you.
I feel
Yes, I can hear you.
I feel like we can all separate ourselves from the Barb with her store, possibly make more money on those Fourth Fridays, or maybe not. I feel like she's capable of seeing how it could be a benefit to the community to have more people to the shopping center. And I feel like I can separate myself as a vendor from both wine and jazz and from the farmers market, because I can see how having events is beneficial to the community and how community people have always been asking for more events in town. And it's one of the main things I hear about as a member of NDDA. Like, why don't we have festivals anymore? Where's the live music? And I personally don't think I have a conflict of interest. I feel like regardless of if I have a good day or not selling at the farmers market is good for the community. And that's where I stand on it. And I know that conflict of interest is something that every person gauges for themselves. That's what I was told.
Yes, you're right,
DOT.
Tanya.
And I don't feel like I do, even though I sell at the farmers market. The farmers market has its own billing and its own issues that have nothing to do with me and their own expenses that I don't
Financially
participate in
benefit from.
or lose if they go in the red. I guess if the farmers market disappeared, then I would have to find another place to sell my stuff every other Sunday. But I don't think still don't think it's a conflict of interest. I don't personally, and that's where I'm going to stand with it. That's
Okay, thanks, Tanya. I think that all of these are like, I don't think anyone has any issues with supporting all of the events. I think that we just need to be very cautious about how we vote on something if there is any financial consideration whatsoever, because that is where conflict of interest comes in. So I understand what you're saying.
This is Ron. I feel like Tanya. The farmers market doesn't pay me anything. They didn't pay for anything last summer. They did the summer before, but they only paid for electricity that year. I think conflicts of interest only are of concern when someone doesn't divulge it or someone doesn't acknowledge it, and if that does, in fact, have some detrimental effect on the DDA. And I don't think Barb voting one way or the other would have a detrimental effect on the DDA, nor Tanya, nor myself. So I will be voting on all issues.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you. Does anyone else on the board have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I've got One, I don't know if it's a question or a comment, or maybe it's both. On a meeting a couple of months ago that I wasn't at, there was a funding request for Ned Gravel. And the decision making on the amount that was provided to Ned Gravel was less than what was requested based on other events wanting money. And I just want to talk through before we go through and look at this. And Kate, I know you said that you were in the process of calculating what was left in both the special event funding and in the parking funding after this current request goes through, where we're at with that. And if the request was that everybody comes in and requests funding for the are we in a position to look at some decisions that were made previously on other events, and or just talk through, like,
Hi,
doesn't make
Steve. Let me talk you through, because you weren't at last month's meeting, right?
2 months ago, I was at last month's meeting.
You were at last month's. Okay, so let's talk through it then. So yes, and it was because of that discussion that I came last month and I said, okay, let's talk about, because of that, do you want to put limits on things? And because of that conversation, let's do fund round type of situation where twice a year or once a year we ask for things. So that was kind of the follow-up from that call, or from that discussion, because there were a lot of things that, were inconsistent and have been things that you all have talked about every time we have a special event. So I'm really glad that now we have this, because I think it helped me at least talk to these applicants and say, this is what's realistic for them. And Ned Gravel, their request, their special event request is in line with the new cap. Now, what could be revisited, I think, if the board chose to go that way, was if there were other traffic and safety costs that weren't funded. If they want to look at maybe asking to come back for that, potentially, that could be something the board could look at. Absolutely. But with the special event, they were granted within the new cap. So that wouldn't be where they could come back, just based on the policies that you've set. It would be with the traffic and safety. Now, I'll follow up too. So if all of these were funded, there would be $5,000 left for the fall fund round in special event, which is half the funding essentially would be left and available. And that number below wasn't a typo. That is how much. I just forgot we upped it $10,000 this year. So that's why that number, I was like, well, that can't be right, but that is right. And it takes into account the Netter Days funding. So if everything was funded from traffic and safety requests, the amount remaining there would be $14,700.
Okay.
That's
Thank
after
you.
today, Kate?
That would be after today if all requests were funded at their requested amount.
Okay. Great.
So, this is Tanya. I have a question. Could Ned Gravel come in the fall funding and get another 1,000 for the foot race that they do, if they wanted to, since we're doing it in two groupings? Or I'm just curious.
I wasn't that teens. He came for both requests.
He came for. Did we give him 2,000 then for one
Yes.
for each? Oh, okay. Sorry, I don't remember that.
Or no, you gave him 1,000 for. I'll have to look, but I think you gave him 1,000 for each.
For each, right? So two
he
total.
did get
Okay.
2,000
So
for
it's-
each,
it's-
which
it's
wouldn't
in
make
line
sense.
with what we're trying to do.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
that's
It's in line with where we were. And Steve, I wanted to make sure that we answered all of your questions there, because I know there was a lot wrapped up in that. I just want to make sure I got through it.
Yeah. Thank you, Kate.
Okay. And Tanya, thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else on the board have any questions or comments about any of the proposals? Hearing and seeing none, I'm not sure how to unmute Kathleen. So Kate, you're going to have to help here.
Okay. Kathleen, you're unmuted. And this is public comment, and so that means we have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you
Yes.
now. Thank you.
Kathleen Chipai, and I just want to say I typed this up before I just learned some new things that we're commenting on. So I'm against the DDA listing numerous events, asking for money in the packet as action items without any discussion prior. I'm against them all being in a group, though I understand you're voting on them separately. I'm against giving any money to any of the applicants in tonight's meeting. Subsidizing others' events is not the DDA charter or what the DDA does. Aside from the DDA not being the proper funder of these events, I had a feeling that making the mistake of granting town staff and Netter Days organizers $8,500 to the new and poorly organized and marketed Netter Days, which failed at its aim of making local businesses money, would bring everyone to the DDA trough. I was shocked when I learned the DDA decided to give such an enormous amount to an event that was barely thrown together when it requested the money, required the businesses to brainstorm and come up with our own individual activities in order to be included on the digital-only map, and not marketed properly. But I understand the pressure since it was the town's idea and proposal, and the board, I feel, felt obligated to give the money. Has the DDA even asked or reviewed where the money it gave Netter Days actually got spent, and or asked the DDA businesses if they benefited in any way? I went to numerous businesses after the event at the shopping center and on First, and not one of the retail businesses said they had anything more than a normal sales day. And the closing of First Street ensured my retail business and others on First made exactly zero in sales until the roadway was reopened at approximately 1 p.m. and regular tourist traffic could resume. Some businesses told me they had more traffic, but only because of the free things they offered as their activity, and it wasn't reflected in sales. The Wine and Jazz event also didn't boost sales in any way at my retail business or others I spoke with after that event last year. Unless you had a ticket and attended, few knew it was occurring, and zero came to town to shop in Ned because it was. The Fourth Fridays does not include anyone outside the shopping center, so that is really not inclusive. And unlike other events, the farmers market got a free ride from the town on not having to apply or pay for anything, including deposit rent or insurance to the town to use Gershio Field for years. Since then, they have used Ron's lots for some years with no rent, and this year are scheduled to pay a pittance, which is $1,000 for all the events total and generator gas, which comes to $90 an event. I remember last year seeing they were making over $9,000 a day in sales. If they cannot afford to pay for putting on their events, it is not the responsibility for the brick and mortar businesses or the DDA to subsidize them. If anything, my mostly locally made business loses sales to the light vendors at the farmers market. And I'm quoting the packet. The farmers market is grateful
Thank
for
you,
the
Kathleen. You're at your 3 minutes. Thank you.
Kathleen, we did receive your email, and I will put I'll put that in the minutes.
Great.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment? Not hearing or seeing any, I would go back and ask if there is additional board comment. Otherwise, I would be looking for a motion one by one on these items.
And just a reminder for your ease, they're listed in the packet at the bottom.
Thank you.
This is Andrew. Barb, I was out of town and didn't see the feedback from the Netter Days, just something that Kathleen brought up. But was that a survey shared with everyone?
Andrew,
Hi.
it's Kate. Yes, that survey was shared, and the initial responses are a part of last month's packet.
Okay.
Miranda shared that, and she was going to come back again and just give an update with what more was received. But I don't know if Scott has anything more to say about it, because Scott worked with Miranda on getting that out to individuals.
Yeah, Kate, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. We actually got very specific feedback from a number of businesses on what they thought the impacts of Netter Days was. So some of their feedback was qualitative commentary and remarks. But we also got numbers back too. Some of them told us exactly what they had in revenue that particular weekend versus a comparable or almost exactly the same weekend 1 year prior. Now, I'm sure there's a number of factors that go into that, but we actually got quite a bit of feedback. In fact, we got more feedback from the businesses locally than I know of us ever getting around any other event that's been put on downtown.
Thanks, Scott.
Scott?
Does anyone have any further questions about that? Hearing and seeing none, I would still entertain a motion on any of these items individually.
This is
I'll make a
Scott. Can I
motion.
can I make
Go
one
ahead.
more comment?
Yeah, please.
I have to say, I know that we have guidelines and we have rules around how we determine conflicts of interest. And I have to say it concerns me a little bit that there seems to be a trend occasionally where people just feel like saying, I don't have a conflict of interest, even though the potential is there. I find it just a little bit troubling. And I would just caution the group to not just let us always state no conflict of interest and then move forward with voting.
And that
Because
is something
does-
that the other Go
it
ahead.
does-
The
it-
other meetings that I attend, they announce that at the beginning. If anyone has any conflict of interest
Right.
with any of the items, speak up. So I
That's
said it
proper
at the wrong
process.
time.
Yep.
But it is proper process, and I attend 5-6 meetings every week in all different jurisdictions and capacities, and it is always said, and it is not something that we say at the beginning of every meeting, which we should, just to clarify.
I don't disagree, and I appreciate you bringing it up at the beginning of this meeting. And I would, again, not pointing fingers at any individuals. I just think that we should be a little bit. I think we should be conscious of it, and we should actually police ourselves in that manner in a way that we don't have anything that we have to explain later. Leave it at that. Thanks.
I'm going to say that it is proper to divulge any conflict of interest or even maybe a potential one. But where there's a problem is where that conflict of interest is obviously and in fact detrimental to the DDA. So I don't believe any of my votes would be detrimental to the DDA. If somebody else does, speak up and tell me why.
Yeah, and Ron, you stated that you do not receive any payment for any of the traffic and safety funds that Nederland Farmers Market would be approved of, correct? You said that before, but I just want to make it clear because I do know that is one question because they do work with you. And so if you make that clear, that might help with that perceived conflict.
Last season, they paid for nothing, not even the electricity they used. So I subsidize the market in addition to the DDA. Now, if my subsidizing them is a conflict of interest, I can't see how it would be. The year prior to that, they paid $500 towards the electric bill.
And that's
Okay.
fine. It's more, will these funds be used to pay you for services? That would be the main question, and that's where the conflict would be. Obviously, if you voting on this would be essentially voting to approve funds that would pay you for parking and et cetera.
No.
Okay, thank you so much for the clarification.
I'd like to motion that we approve the funding for the Fourth Friday, $1,000 for promotion of the Fourth Friday at Caribou Village.
Second.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Kate, can you take the roll?
All right, Ron Mitchell,
Yes.
Andrew Dewart,
Yes.
Steve Roundtree,
Yes.
Scott Papich,
Yes.
Catherine Valen,
Yes.
Danielle Kraus,
Yes.
Barb Hart,
Abstain?
Trustee Corvallin.
Couldn't hear that, Tanya.
Thank you.
Thank you. The first one being done, I would entertain a motion on the second one.
I'd like to motion that we approve the Nederland Wine and Jazz Festival benefiting the seniors for $1,000.
Second.
Second that.
Second?
Great, Kate, would you take the roll?
Ron Mitchell,
Yes.
Andrew Dewart,
Yes.
Steve Roundtree,
Yes.
Scott Papich,
Yes.
Catherine Valen,
Yes.
Danielle Kraus,
Yes.
Barb Hart,
Yes.
Trustee Corvallin.
Yes.
Thank you all.
You. That leaves us with, let's see, Ned Jazz Wine for traffic and Ned Farmers Market requests. I would entertain a motion.
Can I ask for a clarification on something? This is Scott.
Please.
So we were talking about, I just want to go back to the farmer's market because I'm confused on this one. So Ron, you made it clear earlier that no one has ever reimbursed you for anything on this last year. There's $1,000 on the table requested. I think that's the amount that's requested. Is that correct?
No, they're requesting more.
What's the number?
There's two.
What's
There are
your
two
question of me,
amounts.
Scott?
Well,
They're requesting 3350 for traffic and safety. If there's anybody from the farmers market that wants to detail where that would go, potentially,
I'd be
if that
happy
would be
to.
helpful.
sure.
So a little bit different, I think, perhaps than in the past. And if it's, what we're asking for is small amounts of money under the traffic and security, small amounts of money for each of our Sunday markets. And as you know, we have 11 markets across the year. So did I do that one right? Yeah. 2 of them are festival markets. I'm looking for Kip to be nodding a little bit. And so each of our summer markets, which were on that page, but it's basically 2 in May, 2 in June, 2 in July, and 2 in August, with the exception of the additional festival market funding. We're asking for $250 for each of those to really make sure that we improve our parking, bring in as many people as we can, and limit the impact on our neighbors, you know, Salto and the vet and some of the other folks that are right there close by on First Street. So that's one element of it. We combine those two into one request. The larger chunk of the money is towards both security, because during our festival markets, we do have liquor vendor or alcoholic beverages available. So we have security that is associated with that, as well as flaggers, parking, and signage that is related to traffic flow and safety. Does that clarify?
So a total of 3350.
Correct, for
Yeah,
all of those
traffic.
together across all of the
traffic.
market dates.
And
For
they're
traffic
asking for additional
specifically,
money.
yeah.
Right. And then there's a separate $1,000 for the event management part of the festival, Party in the Peaks in July.
Okay. And do we, I'm trying to recall from the meeting we had 2 months ago. Barb, we have any limits on specific events?
There is no limits on traffic and
No.
safety funding.
Okay, thank you.
It's just the special event funding that we're trying to do them all at 1,000, but the traffic and safety, we have more funding in there, and farmers market brings in a lot of people.
Got it. Okay, thanks for the clarification. Thank you.
If there are no other questions, I would entertain a motion on Party in the Peaks or I'm sorry, Nederland Farmers Market traffic and security first.
Move to approve the request of $3,350 for Nederland Farmers Market traffic and safety.
This is Scott. I'll second.
Thank you. Kate, would you take the roll?
Ron Mitchell,
Yes.
Andrew Dewart, Steve Roundtree,
Yes.
Scott Papich,
Yes.
Catherine Vallon,
Yes.
Danielle Kraus,
Yes.
Barb Hart,
Yes.
Tanya Corberlin.
Yes.
Thank you all.
All right, and that brings us down to the Ned Farmers Market for the event funding specifically that is separate from the traffic. Is that correct, Kate?
Yes, since they're different
Okay,
pots
so
of money
that's
and
the-
different grants, I broke everything out.
That's the $1,000 grant that the events are specifically asking for, and it looks like here that is for funding for. It just says party in the peaks. So I would entertain a motion for that.
This is for the Party in the Peaks.
Yes.
I motion that we approve the $1,000 for the special event for marketing and production for Party in the Peaks.
Second.
Great, thank you. And Kate, would you take the roll?
Yes. Ron Mitchell,
Yes.
Andrew Dewart,
Yes.
Steve Roundtree,
Yes.
Scott Papich,
Yes.
Catherine Vallon,
Yes.
Danielle Kraus,
Yes.
Barb Hart,
Yes.
Trustee Corberlin.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Great, thank you. And that leaves us with Ned Jazz Wine. And I would entertain a motion on the event funding for that.
I move that we approve the $1,000 request for Ned Jazz Wine.
This is for parking and security.
It's not
Okay.
for the event.
She asked for 1,000 for each, so you
Okay, so there's
approved the
two.
1,000 for the special event, and now we're on to the traffic and safety.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Nope, thank
Great,
you.
thank you.
Okay, so I move that we approve the $1,000 requested for parking security for Ned Jazz and Wine.
Yes, thank you.
Second.
Great, Kate, would you take the roll?
Yeah, Ron Mitchell, do we lose Ron? Oh, see him. Come back. Andrew Dewart,
Yes.
Steve Roundtree,
Yes.
Scott Papich,
Yes.
This is Ron. I vote yes. I'm having trouble. I've got to go offline and come back on.
Okay, thanks, Ron. Scott, Catherine Vallon,
Yes.
Thank you. Danielle Kraus,
Yes.
Barb Hart,
Yes.
Trustee Corberlin.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Here.
Thanks very
That
much
wraps-
for your support.
Yeah, thank you. That wraps up our special event and traffic support funding, which brings us into the Transportation Improvement Project repaving visitor center. At this time, I'm going to hand the meeting off to Andrew as I have an event that I have to get to this evening. So Andrew, you are on it. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, Barb.
And Andrew, I wanted to let you know that we have Town of Netherlands staff here ready to present. And so I'm just going to hand it over to y'all right now.
Hi, I'm Britt. I'm the community planner for the town of Nederland. I'm just going to give you a brief summary, and then Mark, the streets manager, and myself will answer any questions you have. In 2020, the NDDA approved $139,000 for repaving the visitor center parking lot and paving Jefferson Street as part of the town's transportation improvement project grant. The tip consists of creating a sidewalk on West First Street connecting RTD Park and Ride with the Visitor Center and Jefferson Street adjacent to the Kathmandu Plaza. The project includes a high-speed electric vehicle charging station, bike racks, a rain garden / planter, and wayfinding signage. To date, the plan has been that the NDDA would complete the repaving once the sidewalks have been installed. Unfortunately, the town has not been able to complete the construction of the sidewalks until 2024 because the utility poles needed to be relocated before CDOT will approve the final project design. The town is still working with Excel to finalize those plans and agreements. Town staff met with JVA, the town's engineers, about the TIPS project on May 4th, 2023, and determined that there would not be an issue with paving the visitor center lot. Now, since the impact of the sidewalks in the visitor center parking lot area is minimum, and we have the funding in the grant to replace any area that is torn up because of the sidewalks. Since the visitor center parking lot is in such rough shape, the town is requesting the NDDA consider moving forward on paving it this year versus the town doing more temporary patches. Regarding Jefferson Street, because the TIPS plan already includes partial paving in order to address the grading issues, we recommend that the NDDA hold off on paving that area until 2024, which means the funds would need to be budgeted for this project for next year. Financial considerations: if the NDDA is repaving the visitors parking lot now, it is recommended that a subcommittee be formed to work on securing a company to complete the paving. The NDDA would handle the contracting and payments. The questions we have before the board is, do you approve the paving of the visitor center parking lot in 2023? And do you approve budgeting for paving Jefferson in 2024?
Great.
And do you guys have any questions for us?
I think we could go around the room for questions. Britt, if was Mark gonna chime in now or after?
No, we were just gonna give you a summary. Mark and myself have really been the Nathan and Miranda have as well, but we've kind of been actively meeting with Excel and pushing weekly to get some of these updates and make sure we're still moving along on this. So any questions you have, whatever I can't answer, Mark will be answering, and there are some questions he might not be able to answer and I can answer for you.
Okay, well, I can go around and I guess start with Scott. Scott, do you have any questions? Comments?
I do have a question. So I'm kind of curious what the incremental cost might be by splitting this paving project into two pieces if we do it that way.
That's a good, that's a great question. I'm not 100% sure. I imagine labor not being combined would probably be that, but I wouldn't know without having some kind of budgeting information or proposals from a contractor. And I don't know if Mark can speak to that at all, but I think it would probably be the same.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have a good answer for that either. I think if anything, maybe just pulling up proposals for doing both of the paving projects and then doing them separately and just seeing what the bids come back at.
So I'm not sure how the DDA wants to handle this. I think we need to discuss this, but you know, it's a sizable item, and it needs to happen, but it needs to be happening in an efficient manner. Makes sense that we have to break it up for logistical reasons, but I think we also need to know what the cost is really going to be if we do break it up. And I think that information is essential to making a decision, in my opinion. Anybody else?
I mean, I've got some stuff to add, Scott, but I want to go around the room here and make sure we give everyone a chance to ask questions. But it sounds like, revisiting what the additional mobilization and any other incremental costs for two separate shots is kind of something we want to acknowledge and find out or discuss. Danielle, you have any questions, comments?
I think I would like to hear more from the rest of the board before I really have any, but chances are I have no questions and comments. Thank you.
Okay. So we got your Ron. Are you able to unmute, Ron?
Sorry. Yeah, I've got it unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we got you.
I would think it would be much cheaper to do both at once. What was the reason for waiting for 2024 on the street?
1 second here. Mark, were you about to talk?
Yeah, so the Jefferson, it's recommended that it goes over there or changes to 2024 because of inside of the grant there's already some partial paving that will happen for some of the grade issues on that road. So by allowing the grant to do that, it will alleviate some of the costs on that grade issue.
Have an example and you describe.
Sorry,
I don't know why there's feedback and I couldn't hear Mark at all.
So you have good intent.
Tanya.
Needs to mute.
When you're like.
Okay, I'll go ahead and say that again. So it's by holding off on the paving of Jefferson Street until 2024, the TIPS plan already includes partial paving to address the grading issues on that road. So if you waited until 2024 to pave after the TIPS project is happening, you'll be able to utilize that partial paving from the TIPS project, and it should alleviate some of the costs that would come from the NDDA's budget.
And on top of that, some of it is just, we will have to do some temporary fixing of the visitor lot again. And so I think it's just the visitor center, we're trying to avoid having to partially fix little spots among the lot as a whole.
So it's a funding issue in terms of doing the street, and that is an advantage to us to wait till 2024. Is that correct?
If I understand you correctly, yes. So we'd be utilizing the TIPS grant to partially pave sections of Jefferson to correct the grading issues there. So then that way, whenever it comes time for the NDDA to pave that section or to pay for it to be paved, you'd be alleviating some of the costs because of the partial pavement that's already been placed there.
Thank you. Now I understand.
Catherine Valen, questions?
Yeah, that just kind of answered my questions too. So at least right now, I don't have any additional questions or comments.
Steve Roundtree.
Yeah, I guess the one question just under the financial considerations part of this, it's talks about that the DDA would work on securing a company. And did the town buy paving equipment last year? Wasn't that something that was done or no?
The town hasn't bought any paving equipment in years, at least since I've been here. We do have a lay down paving machine, but for the visitor center parking lot, I mean, the way that there's a lot of custom paving that's going to have to be done, and I wouldn't even feel confident in attempting to do it. It wouldn't look professionally done, if I'm being honest.
Okay, so there is a piece of equipment that the town has, but it's not the right piece of equipment to do a parking lot.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, doing like stretches of the roads that have been done in town is pretty easy because you can go all the way down the road in relatively straight line and then turn yourself around and come back. But as far as doing the visitor center, it would be a huge undertaking and probably wouldn't look great.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. That's my only question.
No problem.
Thanks, Steve. Let's see, did I forget anyone? Just trying to scroll through tiles, so.
It's Tanya.
Tanya, hi, Tanya,
I
questions?
want to piggyback on Steve Roundtree's question. It says to form a committee to hire a team to pave it. Is that the NDDA has to form a committee to hire the company? I mean, apart from a couple of us, most of us don't know anything about paving parking lots.
I imagine that it would be similar to Big Springs, how we worked in tandem with town on that.
Okay.
That was
'Cause
kind of how I
personally, would
imagined
think,
it.
I personally would think if we gave them the money that they could kind of run with it and wouldn't have to burden somebody on the NDDA with managing all that. But I guess that's another issue, I guess. But otherwise, the aim is clear and I understand, and I think it's fine to split it into two.
Yeah, I think for us, I think it would be that town would, our streets department has a lot of that knowledge to probably source that information. But I think it would be making that financial decision with the NDDA due to this being a kind of custom job in a sense. So really just getting that approval and then the payment would be coming from you guys.
Okay, I just have a couple questions, just kind of clarity, so I can wrap my head around this. So, what I'm hearing, Britt and Mark, is that there's basically a financial benefit to just focusing on the visitor center first and waiting until 2024 to do the Jefferson part. And if we can, reach out and get some paving. A contract with a paving company or get some quotes, should that, is that going to include removing the existing asphalt and are there, and I don't have a full, plan in front of me, but where is the high-speed electric charging station going to go, and does that need to be incorporated into this visitor center parking?
So there's the EV chargers that are going in. The one that's currently in the visitor center is going to be relocated over to the southwest corner where the town parking spots are now. So that'll get relocated, and then another EV charger that the town purchased a couple of years ago that just got delivered last year will be installed as well, but that won't go towards this project as far as the paving goes. That's already been it's currently being bidded on to be paid for to be installed before the visitor center would be paved.
Okay, so like all the subgrade work that's involved in this project, be it EV charging or anything else, is going to be dealt with before visitor center would need to be repaved?
As far as the EV chargers go, yes, that's correct. And with relocating the chargers, there's no trenching that needs to happen through the visitor center parking lot. Everything will be done by the transformer that was installed on the southwest corner as well. The only thing that I could think of that may come into play here is if you wanted to do like any sort of millings and then breaking up the current parking lot and then getting that out of the way, which I would assume would just be a part of the bid for the paving project.
Right. Okay, so basically, if we were to, hypothetically approach a contractor and say, hey, we want a quote to, remove and replace the existing asphalt in the visitor center parking lot, they don't need to worry about any other subgrade stuff. It's, that would all be taken care of. Is that correct? They're just dealing with paving and signage or painting and paving.
Yep, paving and then paving, and then anything that if you just want to pave over the top, and I think this is a decision, of course, for the NDDA, but If you wanted to just pave over the existing pavement that's there or to remove it, I think that's a decision to be made through the board and then to go from there. But other than that, I would put it to where it's just going to be paving and striping and then whatever decision as far as removing goes.
Yeah, it seems like JVA we'd want JVA to weigh in on what the best plan would be for whether removing and replacing or going on top of what's there. What would seem to make the most sense. And in a perfect world, like what with summer, I know with Big Springs we've been waiting for it to warm up. I did just have been in contact with Edge Contracting, and they've been basically held off since end of October last year because of weather. So, I mean, it seems like our window, you're proposing that this would be done sometime this summer. We're talking 2023, summer, fall.
That's correct.
All right. Again, not knowing what contractor schedules are, but also, I mean, visitor center parking lot with events that are going on. It's hard for me to visualize without a calendar and seeing, when this is going to happen and what it might displace. But I think that you've answered most of my questions. Is there any other board members that have any additional questions or comments before I open it up to public comment?
Yes, I do. You said something that was kind of cryptic to me. If we are going to do this paving and we just pave over the existing paving, that certainly would cost a lot less than tearing off all the asphalt and doing it again, would it not? Do we have that option? Are those two choices that I heard that are in the mix for this summer?
I mean, I think you have the choice, but I think it needs to be voted on. I don't think it's my decision to tell you whether or not to do it. I mean, I think Andrew hit it spot on to consult with someone who would have the expertise to kind of give some advice on maybe the best way to do it, and then bring it to the board, and then the NDDA vote on what they deem the best course of action.
I agree with that, because a 2-inch overlay could make the curbs a lot lower. I don't know if that's something we want, so I guess we get JV involved right away.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Andrew.
This is Britt. So what I'm kind of hearing, and of course, this is just what I'm hearing. It sounds like the NDDA might be more comfortable if we can figure out what the difference, one, in bidding would be to split up the projects, and also to figure out if it would make more sense from a JVA standpoint, if it's ripped up, or if we're just paving over maybe before a decision is made on this specific project.
Britt, this is Scott, and I think what you just articulated is exactly where I am with this right now. I mean, for my own part, is I would like to know if there's a downside to just paving over the top of what we have versus taking it out and doing a fresh paving job. I'm sure one will cost more than the other, but I'd also like to know something from the engineers about what we should expect for quality of work and how long it'll last. The other issue is the financial, right? So there's a couple of pieces there. One, if we have to do this in two pieces, I'm sure that it costs more just from a very fundamental perspective. But if there's some financial upside to holding off, which I think Mark was explaining, by holding off for one extra year on just one part of it, so that works in the opposite direction. And I think it would benefit the entire DDA and the whole project if we also could see some more detail around here's what it's going to cost if we do them both together, and here's what it's going to cost if we break them into pieces. Here's the benefit that we got by waiting, and here's the extra cost we got by waiting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. Just to give you kind of some insight, Mark's has been in his position a little bit longer. I'm obviously still a little bit newer. But I definitely see the benefit to it, and am more than happy to do the research to ensure that you guys are making the proper decision, and as well as, us as a town, we're making the correct decision as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Britt. Yeah, I just, just a kind of one closing statement on my end is I do think really we couldn't really, I personally couldn't make any, way going recommendation without JVA consulting as to, what's caused, some of the issues. Is it just, lack of maintenance over the years, or is there something else going on that needs to be addressed? So I think we've kind of all acknowledged that, and would love to get JVA to weigh in on. I'm certainly happy to, when Edge comes up, since we have a relationship with them, to just request them to drive by and maybe give us a, pretty, informal or even formal quote on what's there, and make a recommendation, which, is often just can be as helpful. Not quite as official as JVA's, but can be helpful having someone who's experienced in the business do it and familiar with working with Nederland. So I think that's where I'm at. All right. Well, I just wanted to open it up to any public comment.
Before public comment, can I just make a comment real quick?
Yeah.
We do typically on every Thursday, we meet with Nathan from JVA to kind of go over current projects or issues we might be having. So I think it would be reasonable for us to ask Nathan tomorrow and really get more of this information to maybe bring it to the next board meeting, so it's more whole and you have more data to look at. So just wanted to add that.
Be great. Thank you, Britt. Thank you, Mark. Is there, Kate, do you see, I don't see any public comment hands up. Is there any?
I don't see anything either.
Okay.
So I think it sounds like the next steps are that town staff is going to come back next month after doing a little more due diligence based on this conversation.
Yeah, I think that makes most sense from our end, and then I can just keep you updated, and I'll have another aim with some more of that supporting information for you to have for the board.
Wonderful.
Okay. Thank you very much, Britt. Mark, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Okay, my last comment is I really want to see in this discussion with the JVA and Nathan, what the difference is between an overlay and a total tear up and redo. Thanks.
Absolutely. That sounds good.
Thanks, Ron. Kate, do you want to introduce our next?
Yeah, our next item is pretty straightforward. It's Resolution 2023-22 and the funding of the NDDA performance-based project. During the 2023 budget process, performance-based project funding was approved in the amount of $50,000 by the Nederland Downtown Development Authority Board and the Board of Trustees. The attached resolution is needed to authorize the funding and make it available for eligible expenditures. The attached Resolution 2023-22 is for your review and vote. And you'll see that resolution is attached. And my question for you tonight is, does the NDDA board support Resolution 2023-22 and the funding of the NDDA performance-based project?
Oh, I guess I'm going to go around and call, but I want to just kind of speak to, we're going to be lucky even to spend the $8,000 this year that we've already appropriated for design. JVA, just kind of a pre-performance-based update, since this ties into that. We're still waiting on JVA to come up and do field work. They've got, a very preliminary, I think they're, again, only $500 to $700 into their $8,000 approved budget, to bring to some, see if there's a usable plan or usable space, that can be for the performance space in the area that just north of the treatment plant. So I, would like to go around and discuss this, but I personally couldn't imagine any funds being used from the 50,000 for 2023. It'd be great if they're there and they're not used, but just that's where I'm at right now. But I'd go around the room.
Oh, can I just jump in real quick? So
Yeah.
the process, the way that this, because I agree, we're not going to spend $50,000, and we're going to actually talk a little bit more about the budget later in discussion. So I'm just going to be really brief here. And this is in talking to Rita Six, and the town treasurer. We always, when we send a resolution to the Board of Trustees, we send it for what was approved in the budget book that we send to the state. That's just proper process. Now, whether or not we're going to spend it all, that's what we track. That's what we'll be tracking. And so at the end, when we get into budget discussions later this year, we'll see where we are, and we'll see, if we want to just keep rolling that funding over into next year, or if we're not moving forward, we'll put that money back in the pot. So that would be how we would work it out. So I think it's great that we're talking about, like, realistically, we're not going to be spending all of that, but the proper process and kind of how this works so that we can best track it, me and town staff, is that we execute the resolutions that tie to the budget book. And I hope that's helpful for the discussion, and it clears up some of the questions about that.
Can I ask you for something?
Yeah.
You said we have a choice if something doesn't get spent by end of year to either roll it over into the following year, or B, put it back in the pot. When you say put it back in the pot, does that mean that we essentially cancel the project and not continue it at all?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you chose not to fund performance space next year, all that money that was unspent would just go back into the pot.
Got it.
So, and again, that would happen during our budget process. This summer, I'll be coming to you with where we are with spending. And that's where you all make the decisions about how much we're funding in the different areas and what projects. So I just wanted to jump in on that because it does seem crazy. I very much understand that, but that's why that we do it that way, because it just helps to track. It keeps us in line with what we reported to the state.
Okay. Thanks, Kate, for that clarification. Sounds like a budget housekeeping item. I'll go around the room. Catherine Valen, do you have any questions?
No questions or comments.
And Danielle?
Thank you, Andrew, for keeping us up to date on the performance space. Yeah, that's all. Thanks for following through with this and explaining about the budget process for it. Thank you.
Thanks, Danielle. Ron?
Just a comment that we're going to have idle funds again, and I'd like to study this a little bit. And also, next meeting, I'm definitely going to propose that we put some more money in a different bank and on a CD, because we're not spending as fast as we should, and we should protect our money in two ways. One is from depreciation, and also to make sure it's insured. That's my comment.
Thanks, Ron. Steve Roundtree?
Yeah, I guess just on the, I guess the mechanism of us approving this, but knowing that we don't really have the answer to the initial $10,000 that was set aside to research if any of this is really viable. I just want to make sure that if we're pushing this through, that there isn't that we're approving a spend. And I appreciate the dialogue, Kate, on the the budgeting process.
Budgeting, yeah, because really, it is confusing. And the next steps, the way that we discuss performance space and the way that the committee was chartered, was told that you come back after you get this report, and then that would be what would release more funds. So there is a mechanism in place to make sure that that $10,000 cap that we initially discussed before spending more is still honored. Does that kind of help? So that the performance-based committee me and Andrew will be coming back, and Tanya will be coming back once we hear more for JVA about that, and then that will determine the next steps. If the board does feel it's something feasible, if the board does feel it's something that it might want to fund, so that's why the $50,000 in the budget process last year was more, hey, we don't know what it's going to look like, but let's make sure we have some money available to do things if we want to do them, was the way that you had talked about it. But with that $10,000 initial discovery kind of cap, like you said, it still has to be met, and it still has to come back to the board before any more money could be spent on this project.
I thought it was just 8,000, Kate.
Yeah, we said 10. 8 is what the contract was. What we had talked about last year was 10. What Steve is referencing, that number was thrown around, but yes, you're right. The contract is for 8.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you to both of you for the clarification.
Thanks, Steve. Tanya, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I don't. When do you think we're gonna get the report from JVA?
Hopefully we'll get their field work complete pretty soon, and I would hope in the next couple of weeks I can reach out to Nathan.
Nice.
And then, again, that there's still going to be a lot of development and, various input that we need just to make it through, this $8,000. So I think, we've got a lot of work still to do, it being, almost mid-May, and kind of just getting back on in the field work. So yeah.
Cool. Well, please keep me posted when you get any reports back on the,
Yeah,
the-
absolutely,
the
Tanya.
floodplain and all,
Yes,
all the issues.
you'll be in
Thanks.
that meeting when we get all that back.
Great. Thank you.
And is there anyone else that any other thoughts or questions from other board members before opening this up to public comment?
This is Scott.
Hey, Scott.
Hey, just regarding the resolution itself, is there any downside to not approving this resolution if we know we're not going to spend the money?
Well, you won't have the money then to spend. I need this approved so that I can access the $8,000 for the contract that we're currently in.
I see.
So the downside would be we would have no money. And if I have to adjust this resolution, which I don't know that I could, because I work on this with town, this is, something I work on with Rita, it would delay another month.
Great. So we need to approve the 50 just to get to the 8 that we're already
Yes.
agreed to spend. Okay, I got it.
That's true, Kate. We didn't already approve the 8 last year, or is that?
So you
that's lumped
approved
into
it,
this?
but it was so late in the year that no
Uh-huh.
money was spent, so we didn't do a supplemental. There was no even way to do a supplemental. So we worked with Miranda, and if we knew there wasn't going to be any money spent, so it just made sure that we were covered, that you had motions that covered it, and then with the budget process, you had this $50,000 already, because all of this kind of happened during the budget season too. So you spoke about it in the budget meetings as well as after, because I think we even had an item on this in December too, hoping we could get something, but we weren't able to. So if we had funds available to cover any costs, and we had the proper motions, but this is different now, since we're really into the project and it was for the 2023 budget. It needs to go through this process. Sorry if that's a little confusing. It was just the way that things went down at the end of the year, and knowing that we had some budget wiggle room to pay if $1,000 bill had come in.
Right. No, I wish that, that makes sense.
Yeah, sorry, it's
I-
confusing with just the way it went down.
Right. No, I think, but Scott, thank you for asking that clarifying question.
Right. And to clarify further, before any, so we're going to go through the first $8,000 to $10,000 with JVA, and then we come back and make further approval to spend anything over and above the original 8,000 to 10,000. Correct?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Thank you
because
very
it
much.
really is just to see how feasible this is, what the constraints are, so that a good discussion could actually be happening amongst all the boards, amongst everyone. That was really the thought, so that then we would see if there was any more money we wanted to put into it. It is identified in our strategic plan, so it just made a lot of sense, especially with a lot of the conversation that's been going on in town. So that's how that kind of came to be.
Got it. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Is there any public comment on this? Seeing and hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
I move we
On this.
approve the $50,000 budget amount for the performance space.
Second.
Thank you. I'll do roll call. Ron Mitchell,
Yes.
thank you. Andrew Dewart,
Yes.
Steve Roundtree,
Yes.
Scott Papich,
Yes.
Catherine Vallon,
Yes.
Danielle Kraus,
Yes.
Trustee Corvallin.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Okay, looks like next item is the public art mural project. Kate, you want to introduce this, or do you want me to take it?
Sure. So I'm going to hand this over to Danielle, actually. This is Danielle's item about next steps for the mural. So Danielle, do you want to take over, or I can read what you have here, Danielle? It's up to you.
I can read it. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Danielle.
This is for our public art mural project. The scaffolding financial clarification and support is needed for the mural artist to continue. Ned Public Art's chosen artist is waiting to sign the contract for the Nederland Food Cooperative until there's a better understanding on how the scaffolding is taken care of financially. Due to the terrain of location, a boom crane is recommended. More research was done and will be shared with you guys during this meeting. During a previous meeting, a board member recommended that Nederland Public Art Committee use some of our public art funding to secure a professional setup for the artist. The committee has $3,935 available and would like to put what is needed towards the correct equipment rented from a professional for this mural. The question before the board is, do we approve of the use of needed Nederland Public Art funds toward the rental of appropriate scaffolding equipment? The further research I have done, due to the terrain, a boom lift would be the most appropriate. We did do a quote for a scissor lift, which came to $2,283. This would include delivery of the equipment, pickup of the equipment, rental insurance for the equipment, processing fees, and tax. This was a little bit lower than the research done for a boom lift. And this afternoon, I also called a local, Keith Borman, who has his business, Keith Bob. He has the equipment and he would encourage us to collaborate with Good People Tree Service. And the estimate for them would be about $2,000 to help get the project done. The other research that we did for this was, rather than renting equipment to hold the artist up to the mural wall and have her paint it, we were thinking about doing the same kind of approach that we did for the Nederland Feed and Pet mural, which was how Greg painted on panels, and then we adhered them to the building. We installed them onto the building. Talking to Keith Borman about his equipment and how he could collaborate with Good People Tree Service if they would want to collaborate with us. He thinks that would be more appropriate, safe, time efficient, and using local businesses for the project to go ahead and buy panels again, and then have the artist paint them and bring them to location and spend one day having them installed. So instead of renting a scissor lift or equivalent at over $2,000, it would be about $2,200, maybe more if it took the artist longer to do the work. Or we're looking at around $2,000, and it wouldn't matter how long the artist took to do the work because the company would come in and help us install. The wood panels we would be looking at is maybe an 8-foot by 16-foot or an 8-foot by 24-foot mural. This would be different from what we originally quoted for the 15-foot. I have this measurement wrong. I wrote it down wrong. But the size of the mural would change if we do it on panels, which would open up some of the funding available that we already agreed to give the artist to pitch in on covering the cost of an install and buying panels. But I want to make sure that doing the install, we don't use up all of the funds for her. Otherwise, this would not be a business savvy agreement for her, which is why she has not signed the contract. So what I am asking the board is, are we still in agreement that we use some of Ned Public Arts funding to help with this dilemma in terrain and change in procedure of this mural so that we can move forward with getting this one done this summer? I hope that makes sense. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
I have a question. This is
Yes.
Tanya. Have you talked to the artist about what she prefers? Does she prefer to do the panels and then put them up? Or does she prefer to be working on that lift jack thing, whatever it is that you were talking about?
She and I were doing the research, and then I told her to keep in mind which one she would prefer as she did her research also. I have not confirmed if she has a preference, though we were talking about the benefits of how Greg's mural could be moved if we needed to. It could be auctioned off if we wanted to. And she liked the idea of that. So chances are we're leaning towards wanting to do the panels, but I have not confirmed that with her yet.
Okay. Okay, that's it. I'm in support of using the funds to finance this issue.
Thank you, Tanya. Andrew, would you go around the room for us, please?
Yeah, I'd like to go around the room. Thanks, Tanya. Steve, do you have questions, comments?
No, thank you for all that you're doing, Danielle, on these projects.
Oh, you're welcome, Steve. Thank you.
Okay. Scott?
Danielle, this sounds like it's kind of become very complicated, and appreciate the effort you're putting in on it. Sounds also, please confirm, sounds like we're going to end up spending at least some portion of the $3,935 to do something more than what we originally expected, whether it's buying panels or it's lifting panels or it's lifting an artist. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you anticipate that whatever it is we spend to get this work done with this artist will go over and above the $3,900 that we still have in the budget, I should say?
No, Scott, I don't think that what we're looking at is going to cost more than what we have available. And we're hoping that we won't use all of what we have available because we still want to put together our art walk in July.
Yeah. Yeah, so I would be supportive of just having you making an informed, experienced person decision to do what's best with the 3,900 that's there.
Thank you.
Scott. Catherine.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Scott on this one, especially because we don't know for sure if the artist has, a preference, who knows if she's scared of heights or whatever. The panels, this and that. I think it's, basically, obviously, we want to get the project done, but it's not super clear to me that one way is vastly superior over the other options. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Catherine.
Ron. Ron, I'll come back to you. You're muted. I might just offer some.
I just unmuted you, Ron.
You unmuted? I don't know. Where am I? Unmuted?
You're unmuted now, Ron.
Okay.
We can hear
my
you.
comment is that I defer to Danielle's judgment. She always does a good job at it. And I'm nowhere any expert whatever in that realm. So I rely on Danielle's work and excellent participation. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Ron.
Yeah, I would, I guess, just offer my thoughts on equipment and staging and scaffolding. Obviously, certainly up to the artist, knowing that, any piece of equipment, if it was an actual scissor lift or a boom lift, you have to have the operator who's really familiar with that equipment, because of the potential for injury and or damage to the building. And I know that just from experience working in like a boom lift, it can be kind of make somebody seasick after a while, and jerky and choppy trying to move it. If the panels are preferable and in talking with the artist, then I think that's probably the way to go. But I wonder why this is the scaffolding seeming like not an option, because the ground was uneven. Danielle, is that what the thought was?
Yes, the terrain over there is sketchy, and I talked to AJ Cozile, and his experience is if we leveled the ground, not only would we need to pay for time and equipment to level it, and then beautification of any changes we made to runoff, but then the first rain that we would have, any equipment would sink into it.
Yeah, I just wonder why not, like, because they have adjustable, pretty adjustable feet for scaffolding, that when are able to accommodate pretty uneven terrain. I haven't looked at it recently, so I don't know what, how out of level things are over there. But certainly scaffolding is put up on hillsides and uneven terrain on a regular basis. And I just would, I'd be happy to look at it with you, Danielle, and see if maybe the scaffolding idea has been discarded too soon.
Sure.
If there is a way to do that, because it seems like a stable, because you can get an awful lot of scaffolding delivered and put up for less than $1,000, for a pretty long period of time. I don't know how long you think you need this there.
Okay.
But yeah, it would seem that might be an option worth looking at. And but again, if the artist would rather do panels, I want to honor that and say that if the artist has any issue with heights, but I would like to think that there's a really pretty reasonable way to get scaffolding staged on that building for a month to a month and a half for $1,000 or less.
I appreciate your feedback on that, Andrew, and would like to look into what professional companies we would be able to have set that up.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody,
Yeah.
for your comments on this.
Any other public comment on this? Don't see or hear any public comment. Okay.
Sorry,
Oh,
I can make a quick comment. It's Stephanie.
hi, Stephanie.
Hello. I know this artist very well, and besides the challenges that this particular building takes, she did a mural in the old liquor building along Canyon Street. I can't even remember the name of that liquor mart, and she was in this machinery to get her up and do it. So that is her comfort zone. She is not at all afraid of heights.
Great.
Thanks, Stephanie. Okay, well, I guess with that,
To a
question
motion.
before. Yeah, we're ready for a motion. So, the question being, does the board approve of the use of needed Nederland Public Art funds towards the rental of appropriate scaffolding equipment?
And to
With-
clarify, I will be doing the research and bringing back to you that research and what we choose to do and why that made the most sense to our decisions.
I move
Okay.
that we approve the necessary funding for Danielle to make the best decision regarding
Second.
yeah. Okay. You know, fill in the blank.
We got it. Thank you. And Ron seconded. I have that. So I'll do roll now. Ron Mitchell,
Yes.
Andrew Dewart, Steve Roundtree,
Yes.
Scott Papich,
Yes.
Catherine Vallon,
Yes.
Danielle Kraus,
Yes.
Trustee Corvallin. Great. Thank you all. Andrew, do you mind if I run through the information items and then you can jump in? Is that all
That'd
right?
be great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Kate.
Thanks so much. All right. So you'll see attached Barb's chair report. And then we have Ron's treasurer report. Ron, do you have anything to add?
No, I have nothing to.
There you go. Okay.
What's going on?
No, I have nothing to add.
Okay, there it goes. Sorry. All right, thanks, Ron. And then you'll also see March's profit and loss statement attached, as well as my report. And I don't have anything above and beyond to report other than you will be seeing a doodle poll from me tomorrow. We were able to connect with Trustee Sterling again and get some dates. And so I'm going to send out another doodle poll with times for the rest of this month and in June for us to come together to discuss our strategic plan. I really do want us to do it within the next few weeks because I think it will be really helpful to head into budget season with a good tethering to our plan to see where we want to go for next year. So that's just my 2 cents on that. And then Miranda isn't here tonight, and she has her town staff report included. And you can always feel free to follow up with her directly if you have anything in there that you have questions on. Beautification, Judy has begun starting weekly and cleaning up the pots and getting ready to plant. So that's really exciting. It's been nice to see her around town again. There's no new updates on Big Springs at this time, like Andrew, other than what Andrew already offered up. There's no updates from committee. and the communications committee is working on the web handoff to Peter. We are scheduling a meeting with Spafford, and it's exciting to get that really moving. Let's see, what else do we have? The performance space, Andrew, we have no new updates other than what Andrew gave you, that we're still waiting on those results, and hopefully those will be coming within the next few weeks. Danielle has a NPAC update in here. Danielle, do you have anything that you want to add?
No, thank you, Kate.
All right. And then wayfinding, Steve Roundtree, do you have any updates that you want to offer?
No, I don't think there's any updates on that. You know, I think we've had some good dialogue and getting things moving forward, but I don't think there's anything that we really need to do an update on right now.
Yeah, last month we just stated that we are working on scheduling, and it's looking like it's going to be early June, but we haven't gotten the firm date schedule. But all the town parties are talking, and our consultant. So things are moving, just not too much to report right this second. All right. Is there any questions on any of the informational items? I kind of went through there quickly, and I just want to make sure if anything caught you and you want to bring it up right now, please feel free. All right, hearing and seeing none, I'm gonna pass it sort of back over to Andrew to discussion items. Our first item is 1% for the arts, and our past board member, Rhea Warble, who is still on our public art committee, would like to present this item for you all this evening.
Hi, everyone. This idea has been in the back of my head for a number of years. You know, when we first started the public art subcommittee to be funded by the DDA, we had always envisioned that this public art subcommittee would not be part of the DDA in perpetuity, but become its own board and self-funded. So I did a little research and realized that many towns, even the state of Colorado, have something called 1% of the arts, where 1% of the estimated building construction cost goes into a separate fund to support public art. So this proposal that's before you, I actually copied more or less from, I think it was the city of Carbondale here in Colorado. So this would tax future commercial development in the downtown area, 1% that would go into a separate fund to be used for public art. And the way it's worded right now is that public art would be put on the building that's being constructed, but it doesn't have to be that way. And then there's, you know, various language in there of what qualifies something like upgrading of building versus new construction. And I guess right now, maybe I'm just looking for just overall thoughts to see if this is the direction that maybe the town would eventually want to go in, and then maybe work out the nitty-gritty details at a later time.
Great. Thanks, Rhea.
Since this is discussion, we can just kind of go around and answer Rhea's question if you want, Andrew.
Yeah, that'd be great. Danielle, do you have anything you wanted to add or questions?
Rhea, thank you for putting this information together so well, and thank you for abbreviating it so well tonight. I'm definitely in favor of it and would love to hear what the rest of the board thinks. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just kind of haven't had a whole ton of time to study this yet, but so we're talking basically any capital projects that the town would do within CBD.
I didn't do it just for the town. I did it, I think a lot of jurisdictions it is just for the municipality that's taxed, but no, this would be any commercial development. So even private developers would pay into the same tax.
Okay. So 1% across the board for any capital projects.
Right, with the exceptions that I think I listed in the packet, which you know, it's pretty clear in there. I got to open it back up. You know, it has to be a major capital construction project. Can't just be like repainting your building or something. You know what I mean?
Okay. Let's see, Scott. Questions or comments?
Yeah, I have got a question. So this is just for commercial development only. Is that correct?
Correct. Not for residential.
Okay. And who gets to determine what the art installation will be for each project that gets taxed?
That's a great question. You know, I guess I think the way it works is that there's usually a board, some kind of committee made up of, you know, folks that will agree for it. So, but whether it's the commercial developer that wants to propose something or whether it's an open call like we've been doing, and then the developer is part of the decision-making process. I mean, I think all of that is up for discussion.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a big thing. I don't expect us to have any answers tonight, but
Right.
I'm just throwing it out there. And in fact, if other people want to kind of work on this and flesh it out more than welcome to.
So I think we should give some thought to different scenarios that could play out. One of them is that question I just asked: who gets to decide what the art will be? Is there any kind of we need to also discuss? Is there any kind of approval over what the art is going to be? I mean, if somebody who's doing a project decides, here's what I would like to have up here, a painting of Bob Marley, does somebody in town get to say, you know, you're going to stay with a certain theme? That could create problems.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think that we should stay with the certain themes based on the survey that we've done and run it similarly to how we've been doing our mural project. To me, that makes sense. I mean, a
Yeah.
big question in my head is also, say this developer puts up 1%, but what if they don't want the artwork on their building? Like,
Right.
does it have to be on their building, or can it just go into a general fund for the art committee to decide? Well, now we want, you know, like a $50,000 sculpture in the middle of the circle, or now we want to go do something else, you know, like maybe it shouldn't be on the building. I don't, you know, I don't know. I don't have all the answers.
So one of my concerns is this actually increases the developer's budget by
Yep.
a certain percentage.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
and my concern would be, you know, if somebody said, hey, I've got X dollars to do this project right, now I have to spend another percent on it. That means I'm going to have to compromise somewhere else, maybe in the aesthetics of the building or the drainage or the landscaping. So there's a downside to this, that if we get a mural somewhere, it may cost us quality of development too. I don't know how we get around that.
I mean, it could be, but you know, developers have ways of dealing with increased costs all the time, I would think. I mean, the cost of building materials are skyrocketing. Our water and sewer PIF fees have gone up substantially. Like,
Right.
I mean, I think it's up to the town to enforce what, I don't know, architectural, like that things are built to code in a certain standard. To me, 1%, I don't know. I mean, of course, on $1 million, it's a lot of money, or $10 million is a lot of money, but the
Yeah.
big scheme of things doesn't seem, and I shouldn't talk. I mean, probably Ron Mitchell is going to have some thoughts on this. I mean, he's got a project going in that's pretty substantial, or is going through the works right now. So, I mean,
Right.
I'd like to hear from some of those folks too.
Okay, I'll hand it over here in a second, and I'm not asking you to answer all these questions, Rhea, right now. I would like to see this group be kind of diligent in figuring out all these different aspects of this proposal and make an intentional decision after we consider maybe 10 or 12 or 15 other aspects and consequences of doing something like this before we just approve it because somebody else did it and it sounds
Oh,
cool.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
This is wholly on the discussion item. It's not going to be moved to action item anytime soon.
Okay.
So,
Thanks for hearing me out.
yeah. Yeah. Appreciate it.
Scott. Catherine.
Kind of along lines of what Scott was saying. I mean, it sounds like a cool thing on the one hand. On the other hand, anybody who's kind of paid attention to what's happened with the Marshall fire, where not only people's homes, but also commercial buildings were lost. And then when they're rebuilding, sometimes it became onerous, extra considerations where, if you're building a new home now, you also had to put in some kind of a charging station for an electric car, even if you don't have one, and it added a sincere amount of cost to the project. But in commercial rebuilding or something like that, if there's been some kind of a disaster that has created the need to rebuild, then I don't know, again, when you're dealing with insurance companies and limited budgets and stuff like that, if this is something we want to necessarily arbitrarily tack on. And so we may want to think our way carefully through, are there exceptions to when this applies? And that's kind of what kind of occurred to me. Overall, like say, everybody loves art, so it sounds cool on the face of things, but I think we do want to be very mindful of making a blanket edict on anything.
Thank you, Catherine. Ron.
Did you say Ron?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we do have to give a lot of consideration. We're looking at the Amsterdam project and the projecting costs, and at this point, very rough estimates for about 22 units, running between 14 and 18 million dollars. 1% of that is $140,000, and you're not going to put $140,000 worth of art on one building. And I think you might want to think about graduated pricing in this, where the higher the project cost, the lower the percent goes, so that it is in the realm of pretty much what we've been doing with the art that we're creating now. A 1% difference in the cost of a building could end up being a 7 or 8% difference in the rent that has to be charged for that building. Just my thoughts.
Thanks, Ron. Tanya.
Well, I'm in favor of this idea in like spirit, but I do worry about the price of everything right now. 1% is a lot, like as Ron said, for what he's planning on building. So I do think we need to think about a graduated sort of scale, or maybe even lower it to 0.5%, or just, I don't know what kind of formula would be good. I like the idea of it, but I think like it could generate more money than we could possibly spend. Which would be an interesting dilemma. But I wonder if this was in place, could it be resolved could it be optional, where or like if they say like in a building, if they put in art inside their own buildings, like they want to have art inside the place and they're going to use local artists, would that work in lieu of this, or does this have to be public art, or could it just be any art, so that they wanted to have sculptures in the hallway, or that it would count towards that, and I do think we need to put a lot of, if someone's giving $100,000, they obviously should have a big say in what it's going to be, like the most say. Obviously there should be some vetoing, of course, if it's inappropriate, but that's my thoughts. I think it's a good idea, but I think we may have to lower the percentage because we don't want to discourage development. And everything is so expensive right now. And I just wonder, like, if maybe we do this, maybe it would like, the town can't really afford to give anything either, but you could get a reduction in something else if you do this, just so that it's not putting all the burden on
somebody who's building in town. Um, and I, I'm understanding it's not for any kind of remodeling repairs. It's just for like a brand new building. Would like say for instance, Busey Brew's big deck, would they have to be doing a 1% as well? Or like, I didn't quite, that's just a question for, I guess, since nothing's really in the, we're figuring it out. I would say that would not count. I mean, that's just what I would say, but I don't know.
Let's see. So I think what they did is that repair, maintenance, or refurbishment of any existing structure at a cost of less than 33% of its assessed insurance valuation shall be deemed not to be a capital improvement project. So the Busey Brews deck, as long as it costs to build a third less than what the entire place is valued, it would not count. I mean, that's the way it's, but you know, all business can be changed, but
Yeah,
that's how they do
we're
it.
in charge. Yeah, like I said, I like the spirit of it. I'd like to see
Yeah.
more funding for the
Yeah.
art and more like, you know, I'd love to see a sculpture walk, right? We all want to see that once we finish that co grant and all that. I mean,
yeah,
there's definitely room we could spend the money. I just don't want to put such a huge burden on.
Right.
For
Sure.
instance, Ron, I mean, like, you know, where he already, I mean, yeah, maybe it's easy to think that if you're spending 13 million, what's another 100,000? But it is real money. So, and maybe it should be tiered. So like, you know, cause like, exactly, you're not
Yeah,
going to put
I think-
$150,000 of,
Right.
you're not going to, you know, that's a lot. Right. And
So
that
maybe
is
can I
kind of
make a
what's on the,
suggestion? These are,
yeah. Go ahead,
I
Rhea.
was going to say, these are all great suggestions. I guess at the end of this going around, I guess I'd kind of like to know, like overall, do you guys want to see this come back with some of these brainstorm ideas integrated, or do we just want to totally kill it? So just maybe let me know
I
your
would
thoughts
like
on
to
that
see
too.
it come back myself. I just I just want to be fair to developers, which is strange for me to say that because I usually don't want to be, but it does seem like a lot.
I think Steve hasn't had a chance to speak yet.
Yeah, thank you for providing all the detail on this, Rhea. I think a couple of the, you know, in the discussion items, a couple of the interesting things is just like around the, you know, if there's a district that's going to be taxed, does that necessarily mesh with the DDA, and or is this something that's maybe, is it the entire town? And then the question on whether this becomes a topic of if the public arts subcommittee should become a committee under the BOT. I think that's kind of the interesting part of this, because I think there's a potential that that there's future commercial development that's outside of the DDA. And so I guess the question there is like, are we able to answer the question around like, what is the district and how does this function? Or is this also a discussion item with the BOT, Rhea, or no?
Well, go ahead.
Wait, sorry, just to chime in, yes, I think that this would definitely be something that would need to go to the Board of Trustees too. This is just like Rhea said, the beginning discussion, and you know, you guys could choose how you wanted this to flow through, but it would need to go to the Board of Trustees. It's a much bigger, larger town discussion overall.
And in fact, I believe even if we got it the way we liked it and the BOT approved, I still think it needs to go to the voters, right? Because it's a tax increase. Is that right, Kate?
Yeah, so I would assume that, but I didn't want to throw that. It depends on what all came about, but yes, it would have to be a very public process, I guess is the better way to put it. It would be a very public process and discernment of this process. And so, like Rhea said, she's just looking for some feedback so that we can see if this discussion does want to keep moving, because why we are tied to it, why I see, is because the Public Art Board is underneath us right now. So where that Board of Trustees would come in is, well, do we want to move it under the town? You know, like that's where and then the tax, and those are several different conversations, honestly. So, but it would be wrapped up in this, this item, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think in rough terms, it sounds like a really interesting thing. And my personal opinion is over the course of time that the murals have been going up in town, it's a positive. And this potentially is a mechanism to take that from being enough funding for some simple murals to actual like public art installations, which I think when you go to a lot of tourist destinations, public art installations are a big part of public spaces. And it's an interesting conversation, and I think something that moving forward in a like what's the approach to move forward with something like this, and what are the details? It seems like a positive conversation to have going. So from that standpoint, it seems great. I think there's a lot of details to iron out and figure out, like, is the approach that Carbondale put in place, does that fit the footprint for Nederland, or is there some details that need to be sorted out? But I think there's potential that it could be a huge positive for Nederland. So thank you, Rhea, for having the energy to bring this forward.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, I appreciate you bringing this up, Rhea. Just kind of my own 2 cents that given we just had some, larger, substantive tax increases in town, and we're town's tax rate. I realize this isn't like necessarily a flat tax on everything, but on capital improvements only. I think that might be kind of hard to sell. But also, I think a sliding scale or some bracketed way to approach almost like a fee, public arts fee instead of a tax, and a fee for every $250,000 it drops a certain amount, but just maybe trying to look at ways to still make it so that revenue can be generated without any giant cost, any significantly larger projects, and also figuring out what is that area, and if where do things, where is the area that the money comes from, and then where is the area that the art can go, and if it's are those, as you mentioned, and if the owner of the project gets to choose some things, or if they just opt out and put money in a community art fund, so to speak. I mean, I think it's really interesting, and I do think having a sustainable budget for larger public art would be great. I think there's a lot of fleshing out of those, what is the way to do it where you can kind of get support of the community and not have it feel like another tax, and then have it palatable to large capital improvement projects where it doesn't seem like it's happening at the end, and we've got to spend this 10, 20, 45, 50,000, $100,000 on an art project when they're trying to paint the building. But I personally would like to see this come back with some more kind of details or ideas on fee structure and that sort of thing. So
all great ideas. So thank you. And I mean, of course, the other alternative, if we didn't want to go through with this, is just keeping it within the DDA and DDA funded. Some towns go through Colorado Creative Industries, I think it's called. They become an official creative district. Manitou Springs, for example, is a small-ish town, but bigger than Nederland that does it, and other towns. And there's a substantial financial investment in just running that program. Right now we're just all a bunch of volunteers, but it seems like sometimes, to really get the art really going in Nederland, having it be a destination where people come and see it, do we need to eventually have like a part-time paid person, which a funding mechanism like this may help with that. But yeah, no, I hear you with the taxes. I mean, all of the property assessments are going up, which actually is going to increase the funding that's going to the DDA in future years, I'd imagine. I'm not sure what other taxes. I mean, I think with the sales tax have gone up in Nederland too, I think. Although I don't know how much most voters would really notice the capital improvement tax really in their pocketbooks. I guess it all trickles down. But anyways, it's all great ideas of different ways to structure it. I certainly can do some more research.
Is it okay if I throw
try
in
to
another
find
comment?
examples. Oh, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
And pardon me for interrupting. As I've listened to everybody else on this board talk about this, I've kind of gotten the sense that I think we need to consider what kind of outcomes we want from this, and we want public art. But I'm of the impression that we should not couple our efforts for public art, for quality public art. We should not couple that to commercial development, because the two things really have nothing to do with each other. I don't feel like developers should be burdened with a tax to do something like this. I think that we as a community should just take it upon ourselves to do creativity and do public art where we want, when we want, the way we want, because we want it, instead of handing it over to commercial developers, because I think we'll end up with better results in the end too. I think we'll end up with something that reflects what we want as a community, as opposed to making commercial developers pay for it and making them decide what they would like to see out in the public spaces. And I think that it would be better to see this thing come back not as commercial development tax, but maybe some other way to encourage a more focused, more vibrant public art effort within the community.
This is Danielle. I would like to comment on that, Scott. If we did arrange it, say somebody were to buy a substantial amount of property here in Nederland and wanted to develop it, if we had something in place that was based off of the community voting on what they want to see as public art, that would mean that the community has the say as to what they want to see in place of having large construction done here in town. So if we worded it to where the person putting the money in doesn't get to say what they want, but it is in contribution to the aesthetics of the town, voted on by the town, and how they want to maintain what we've been creating with our public art, that might benefit having large corporations or other people coming in and doing construction here in town, to where we can still have a community say in the beautification of things happening. So if we had a huge building put in, a contribution of having that huge building put in would benefit public art in the beautification of our town, in a say that the community is involved with. So maybe the wording in abbreviation would be that the people paying this fee put into a pot that is community oriented, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can see that. I'll do you one up on that one. So if the point of that is to enhance the aesthetics of our community, where
I
does the
want to
bottom
make a
line?
comment here about art that's already been achieved. The dinosaurs on the rock shop came about as a collaborative effort between the DDA, the property owner, and the business owner. The DDA paid for about half of it, the business owner paid for a quarter, and the owner of the building paid for a quarter also. And in that process, both the building owner and the business owner had a say in what happened, and some of the very small details, but at least that honored their position of being contributors. And I think if you take an approach that you're going to shove this down the throat of somebody that has a building or a wall surface that they have no say, I think you're going to get massive resistance. So I would like to see you take the same approach as you did with the project for the dinosaurs. I think it came out wonderful. I think all parties were satisfied, and I think it's a great contribution to the town, and I think it's a very good model to work from. That's my comment, Ron Mitchell.
Ron, I do hope that most of the people who will be building in our town are as nice to work with as you are when it came to that mural. Thank you.
Scott, can you? I was just trying to hear the last part of where you were going with that.
So I was kind of thinking out loud. It sounds like what, the point of this is to enhance the aesthetics of the community, right? And I'm not sure where we draw the line. I mean, if you're asking somebody to build something and they're wanting to develop something, and we're saying, now give us money to build art, but you don't get to say what it is, it almost seems like the flip side of that would be, you know what, make your building nicer, and we're going to tell you what the aesthetic should be. So, maybe we could put an effort towards a certain standard of aesthetics in the buildings themselves, instead of letting people build anything they can afford and then putting murals up on them.
I see how that could work. However, what I've briefly seen on some social media is that the agreement of aesthetics is very hard to match with the people who are actually putting the money into building. However, if we could come up with an agreement between the people paying the fee, that say there's a percentage, there's an agreement with somebody who says, I really love this idea of a beautiful bronze sculpture in the roundabout. And that is what I would like to contribute to for having been a part in constructing in the town. Maybe that could be something where we don't really want to control the aesthetics of people who know what they're doing as construction workers and builders and contractors. I don't think that should be up to a Nederland public art entity, but let the entity know that, oh, if the town is hoping for a sculpture and they can contribute some finances to that, can we come up with an agreement for that?
I think, to a certain extent with the planning commission, you do have some, rules and regulations already in place with bulk plane and exterior materials and, not maybe tons of architectural input and control, but there's probably more than most people think. But that's kind of separate from the public art thing. So I guess just, I think we all, sounds like, would like to see this fleshed out some more in a way that, at least this is what I've heard, in a way that can really not necessarily put anyone off and seem to be feasible to accomplish. Is that what you've heard so far, Rhea? Is there any
I mean,
other
I think I can do some more research and see if there's other, just like what other funding mechanisms are out there. I mean, in the end, it's really trying to get a steady stream of money for public art in the town. I mean, the DDA, how many years left does the DDA have before voters have to approve it again? I mean, who knows? You know what I mean? It would be kind of nice to have something permanent in place. It's kind of where I'm coming from. But how we do that exactly, like I said, is
14 more years of life for the DDA.
14 more years, so substantial. So, okay. Any comments from Miranda Fisher or from Kate or anybody else? I mean, I don't know if if there's someone from the public that wants to chime in.
Miranda is not on the call. I don't think there's any other members of the public, and I don't have any horse in fight other than I do find what Carbondale to be interesting. I spent some time over there last summer, and it did really inspire me what they've done and how they created a walk. What appealed to me, which I feel like hits into the DDA, is they created a walk, an art walk that drives you through business. And that I think is very cool, and in some of those committees, and like Rhea said, I forget the name of the group, but I have looked into leveraging some of our funding with trying to become one of these creative communities. But again, that's where if we decided to go that route and do more research that way, that could be something I could look at if that was the way the board wanted to go to help with that situation. But that would be something during our budget season I think we would talk about if this kept grabbing some steam. So those are really my only comments on it.
Okay.
There are art districts just like the DDA district, but they're far more specialized than the DDA.
Yeah.
Denver has one in the Rhino district, and they do derive their funds from a mill levy. So, and everybody participates, and I think that is the fair way to do it. Well, if it's for public benefit, then I think you really have to have a broad base where nobody has to suffer from having to fund something that they may or may not be approving of.
So Ron, that mill levy would apply to residential properties as well, right? Everybody in the town?
Yes, it could apply to residential properties, could apply to the whole town, but it would take a vote of the people who are going to pay the tax. So whatever the size of the district is would be just like the DDA. It was a vote of the people within the bounds of the DDA who voted a tax upon themselves. So an art district, and there's a lot of them, it's pretty popular. They're coming forward. So that's one funding mechanism I think you should look at.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and I guess by the property tax, even regardless of whether you tax residential or not, or just commercial, then existing buildings would pay, like say you just did the mill levy increase, but just for like the DDA or commercial districts, it would be existing businesses and commercial property owners paying into it, versus this proposal is more like capital construction improvement projects. So there's kind of new stuff that's going on, which the reason I took that example is just because it's very commonly used in other towns. But yeah, all things to think about. And I do appreciate, Scott, your comment, like, what's the end goal here? What do we want to see? And maybe really like fleshing out, what do we envision for Nederland as an art community and district, and what is the amount of money that we think we need to accomplish that? I think keeping the end goal in sight is important too. So.
Well, thank you,
All right,
Rhea.
well, thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Rhea.
everyone.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
So next go ahead, Kate.
It's me with the last two items are kind of tied together, and they're with me. It's for the 2023 budget next steps. And last month we discussed that we might need a supplemental after we approved $10,000 in funding for the pump track. But after meeting with the town treasurer, we came up with some different ideas that we wanted to present to you this evening. So during our budget process, the board approved funding to begin research on the Riverwalk in the amount of $50,000. Due to there being no work done at this point in the year, it is requested that the budget be adjusted to $15,000. If the budget is adjusted, a budget supplemental may not be necessary if funding is also adjusted in the following categories. So of that 50,000, 15,000 would remain for Riverwalk. 10,000 would be for the pump track, which funding was approved at the April meeting. And then at the March meeting, you had your executive session regarding the executive director and admin costs. And so then the proposal would be that 5,000 would be put into a bucket, and that should be sufficient for the admin time for the next year, given the cost of living increase and the hours increase. So, and then to hit back at what we discussed earlier, if this plan is approved, next month you would see a resolution for Riverwalk, and it would be like when we did the traffic and safety funding, where we approved for the 30, but we told the board of trustees, hey, but we use some of this for netter days. And so it would happen the same way. We would say, hey, we're asking for 50 for Riverwalk because that's what's in our budget, but we want to stay in our budget. So this is what we're proposing to do with the funding. So that would be how we would be very transparent about the process, but meet the budget like we discussed earlier this evening. So financial consideration is that there's $50,000 available in Riverwalk funding with the revised amount of $15,000 requested. This project was approved as a part of the budget, and $10,000 is proposed to be used for the pump track and $5,000 for administration. So my questions for you this evening are, does the board approve of using $15,000 for Riverwalk in 2023? And does the board approve of using funding from Riverwalk in the amount of $10,000 for pump track and in the amount of $5,000 for administration? Because we would like to move quickly on this, I do have possible motions: a motion to move it to action and a motion to approve or disapprove based on the way that the board decides to go. The next item that you're going to see, so just so that the two items are kind of tied together. So the next item you're going to see is an item on Riverwalk and proposing to create the committee to start doing work. So that's why they're tied. I want to start working on Riverwalk, but I want to acknowledge that there's no way we're going to spend $50,000 this year. And so it's always better to stay in budget. And this plan helps us stay in budget, is basically the long and short of it. So if you all want to go around and ask any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thanks, Kate. I guess my one question I'll start with is, with 15,000 for Riverwalk, if that's the readjusted, and then a combined 15,000 for the pump track and the admin, isn't that 30,000? What of the other 20?
So the other 20, it would just be approved. And again, like I discussed earlier, if it's not spent, it just goes back into the pot for 2024. But at least we have things approved, because again, like what happened with, like we talked with performance space, say after, so I'm kind of talking about the next item. So what I'm asking is that the Riverwalk committee would start looking at due diligence and see what has been done and find all the stuff and get all the conversations that have happened into one place and update the board. And then at that point, maybe we do decide to spend a little bit more money, and then you have the money approved to do something. If there is a next step, we could absolutely spend it. We don't have to stay to the 15. I'm just being conservative in that and just kind of breaking it out that way and giving us some wiggle room. But we could absolutely, because we're approved to go up to 50, you could spend more. You could spend another 10, 20, you could spend that full 20 if you wanted to. It's just reasonably, we know we're probably not going to. So that's why I'm trying to just scale it so that we don't have to go out of our budget if we don't really need to, if we have enough money approved in 2023, because at the end of the day, it matters to us, the categories and how this all gets spent, obviously. But when the auditors look at things and when the state looks at things, they just want to see the bottom line. And so that's where we're staying into, but the proper process is to do what we're proposing.
Got it.
I hope
Okay.
that makes sense. It's kind of confusing.
No, No, it's not. It makes perfect sense.
Okay, thank you.
I think, so that I was going to save something for end of other business, but it somewhat relates to this as well, which it would be, I was going to bring up that I think we need to have an executive session soon to talk about appropriating some funds for a bookkeeping, basically the role that was taken out of Kate's hands. And, if one thing to consider as everyone's thinking about this and we go around the room is that maybe in addition to some money for pump track and money for admin, there's additional money set aside for is that Ron? There's additional money set aside for bookkeeping. So yeah.
So Andrew, I do want to update you on that. Barb has some thoughts on that, and we can definitely follow up. And then if we decide it needs to still be an executive session, we will. But the long and short of it is we are seeing, based on the new system that we have with Rita, if everything keeps going as it is, getting a bookkeeper will actually slow me down a little bit, because I won't have access to be able to run the reports I want to. I'll have to ask somebody else to run them for me, is essentially it. And so that was one of the things that we discussed. Now I'm happy you and I can follow up on this, and you can obviously follow up with Barb as well, and we can move it forward and see if we still want to have that executive session. But the way that Barb, and I hate speaking for her not being here, but the way that Barb had been looking at it was just evaluating what was going on and the reports and that, and if it was becoming more of a time suck, because it's actually become less time consuming.
Is Rita, but Rita is the one doing the information.
No, Rita has just helped me with some training and helped me create some shortcuts. I mean, it was very little things that actually saved me a massive amount of time. And so that's why we're evaluating it, because it might be money we don't need to spend. Because I am feeling a lot more confident in it, and I enjoy being able to pull these profit and loss statements, and it's working much better than it used to, and it's not taking the same amount of time for me, which is wonderful. And I like having control of the books in this way and being able to manipulate QuickBooks and be able to look at different things to help our conversations like this, where I worry before, when I didn't have access in the same way, I had to wait for other people to give me things, and that became challenging. And so I think if we had an executive session and we followed up on it, that would be kind of like what we were measuring, how much are we paying for things that we don't need to? How much of the time do we get it? How much time is there really? Because right now we're seeing things are okay, but that could change. And so it's still being evaluated. So that's really where it is. But please feel free, if anybody else has any other questions, to follow up directly with me and Barb on this in the next couple of weeks, and we can evaluate if you all would like to have an executive session about that. And then we can absolutely figure that into some of these other costs, or with some of the budget wiggle room that we have, is a better way to put it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks, Kate. Go around the room. Ron?
I have no comment.
Okay, Catherine?
Also no comment.
Okay. Scott?
Just one question, quick clarification. When we say that the other 20,000 just goes back into the pot, what we're saying is we're really going to reduce the budget by 20,000. Is that correct?
No, we won't be reducing it just wouldn't get spent at the end of the year. So it would go back into our unprogrammed funds. I guess that's a better way to put it. That these funds are programmed right now. And at the end of the year, if you all, when we evaluate the balances and everything, and if you chose to not move forward, then you can, then that money would just revert back. It wouldn't be in next year's budget. It would be back into our unprogrammed funds, because we don't lose any of this money. It just isn't available to us at the end of the year if it's not spent in the way that it was programmed.
Got it.
If it's a helpful way to look at it.
Scott, Steve.
Thanks for all the additional information, Kate. No additional questions or comment.
Thanks, Steve.
Tanya.
I have no comments.
Okay. I think did I miss
Danielle.
anyone?
I think you.
Danielle, sorry, Danielle.
We
My
heard from
screen
Danielle.
tiles move around.
No problem. No questions, no comments. Thank you.
Okay, so it sounds like I would entertain a motion to move this to an action item, so we can maybe get this taken care of tonight.
This is Tanya. I make a motion to move this to an action item.
Second.
Thanks. I will do roll. Ron Mitchell. Ron Mitchell.
Abstain.
Okay. Andrew Dewart.
Yes.
Steve Roundtree.
Yes.
Scott Papich.
Yes.
Catherine Vallon.
Yes.
Danielle Kraus.
Yes.
Trustee Corvallin. All right. The next motion is to approve or disapprove of the amount for Riverwalk. And then the next after that would be to approve or disapprove the requested redistribution.
I move that we approve the $15,000 for the Riverwalk.
Second.
All right, I'll call roll. Ron Mitchell.
Yes.
Andrew Dewart.
Yes.
Steve Roundtree.
Yes.
Scott Papich.
No.
Catherine Vallon.
Yes.
Danielle Kraus.
Yes.
Trustee Corvallin.
Yes.
Thank you all. And now there's the final motion to approve or disapprove of requested redistribution.
And Kate, just to be clear, we had already voted in the previous meeting to fund the pump track to
Exactly.
10,000.
Exactly.
Right, and the administration, what was the
That
can you
was
speak
during the
again to
March meeting, during the executive session.
Yeah,
Was the
okay.
approval of that. So those items are a part of our budget now, and this is how I am proposing to deal with including them in our budget.
Yeah. Make a motion to approve the requested redistribution of Riverwalk funds for the pump track and administration.
Second.
I'll do roll call. Ron Mitchell.
Yes.
Andrew Dewart.
Yes.
Steve Roundtree.
Yes.
Scott Papich.
Abstain.
Catherine Vallon.
Abstain.
Danielle Kraus.
Yes.
Trustee Corvallin.
Yes.
All right. Thank you all. That motion passes. All right. Now on to our last item, which is my request to form the Riverwalk Committee. During our budget process, we approved funding to begin research on the Riverwalk. We all have discussed how it's a sensitive area that we don't want to just jump into. So that was part of the reason I think that we haven't formed a committee. But since we did identify funding, I want to make sure that there is some work that starts happening and see if where we want to go and see what the will of the board is now that it is in our budget. So, and the Riverwalk is a part of the DDA's strategic plan. To begin this work, a committee must be formed. And at this time, it's requested that the board form a committee and task that committee with doing research on the work that has been done in the past and bring that information back to the board with advice on next steps. The financial consideration is there's $50,000 available in Riverwalk funding with the revised amount of $15,000 requested, and the $15,000 was just approved. This project was approved as a part of your 2023 budget. My question before the board this evening is, does the board want to approve of the creation of the Riverwalk Committee? Of the Riverwalk Committee, and are there 2 board members that are interested in joining the committee? As a reminder, there can't be more than 2. And does the board agree with the current goals proposed, or should the other goals be considered? And this doesn't have to move to action tonight. You could just keep it as discussion, but if you wanted to deal with it this evening, you could move it to action. And then there could be a motion to approve or disapprove the creation, and then to whatever the goals may be. So I leave that to the board this evening, but I just wanted to see if there's anybody interested, especially since there are a couple of people that are newer, that haven't been on committees, and see if anybody's interested in doing Riverwalk and if people agree with the goal or if there should be things added.
Kate. Go around the room.
I'm interested. This is Ron. I'm interested.
Okay. Ron, do you have any comments or questions, or just expressing interest in the committee? Ron, did you have anything else to add, or were you just expressing interest in the committee?
I'm just expressing interest in being on the committee.
Okay.
Been on it before.
Great. Thank you, Ron. Catherine?
No questions at this time.
Danielle?
I think it would be great that we form it. Speaking as a committee member of Ned Public Art, I think this is a really good thing. I was curious, I think it was Ron that had input on relations with business owners in the area, so I'm glad to hear he's interested. And I am also interested in seeing if I could be a committee member if no one else was, or if we could get more than 2 people.
So because of sunshine laws, that's why we only do 2 people.
Oh, okay, I misunderstood that.
That's why that's what it is. It's just strictly a sunshine law. That's why it's only 2 people. But you definitely could be interested in things, and people are always welcome to attend meetings. Like, as you know, with public art, Danielle, there's oftentimes a lot of people from different boards and commissions that want to come. So we just make those meetings public. So it's not a problem. It's just knowing that anytime you all met, it would need to be a noticed public meeting if there was more than 2 of you that formed this committee.
Excellent. And so with that, I'd prefer somebody else jump in, but if not, I am interested.
Oh my God.
Thanks, Danielle. All right, Steve Roundtree.
No questions or comments on this one.
Okay. Scott?
Yeah, I am also, I'm not a member of any specific committees right now, so I would be interested in being part of this. I also know that Barb has mentioned to me in the past that she's interested in being on this committee as well. And I think that, I don't know that we should move it into an action item yet, because I'd like us to have a discussion around the pros and cons of it being more than 2 people on this committee. I understand that there's sunshine laws, but I'm not sure that that cost outweighs the benefits of having
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
two
it's
heads
also,
of it.
it's normally, it's always just two, like, this is the way it is with Board of Trustees everywhere. It is just normal. And I'm just letting you know, and we'll talk to Miranda because there may actually be more of a reason, but I'm just bringing that up, that if this becomes more than two people every time you all interact, you won't be able to group email each other. You would, because there would be more than two people on an email. So you wouldn't be able to meet like that. You wouldn't be able to have all of you on the same email. Then you wouldn't also be able to meet without it being a public meeting. So that's typically why. So I'm just making that very clear that that's what it would be, that there really wouldn't be, you wouldn't be allowed to email each other really. And so that's typically what the issue can tend to be. Now I can be the middle person because I've definitely done that with public art and different things. So that's we have a couple of call-in users and the background noise gets a little
You know what?
bit much, so I'm sorry. We're trying
So
to
I should mention, I just
but
heard from,
so that's really what I want you all to understand, that, and if you want to keep talking about this next month, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that this all got on everybody's radar to start talking about.
got it. I see that there are at least two call-in users, and one of them may very well be Barb. I think that it looks like she might be on the phone right now.
Are you on the phone? A couple different phones, Ron?
It's really hard for me to see who's who. I just know that I'm getting a lot of backup noise. So Barb, if you are on, please
Yes,
feel free to speak.
I am.
Okay.
I am on. Sorry, it's really hard to unmute on the phone, and we are driving back, so I'm probably part of the background noise. I am very interested in being on the Riverwalk committee. I'm not on any other committees right now, although I have reapplied to be on the DDA and plan to ask if I can remain as the chair. I think it would fit really well with other things that are going on in town, and I'm very interested in being on that specific committee.
Hey, thanks, Barb.
Thanks, and I'll remute myself. Figured out. There we go.
Just trying to figure out if there's another call-in user, or if that's Ron showing
That's
up
Ron, I
two
believe.
places. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Got it. All
I
right.
am on the phone to hear everybody because of my
Got it.
hearing deficit, and I'm also on the computer so I can see everybody.
Got it.
That's
Okay.
great, Ron. It's fine. We just want to make sure.
I stay muted most of the time.
Okay. I think Tanya hasn't had a chance to speak on this yet.
Yeah, I don't have any comments. I'm happy there's a lot of people who want to participate. I think it's still a worthwhile project.
Great. I don't have any particular comments on this. I'm glad. Yeah, there's good interest in the Riverwalk. I know that I've heard some concerns from some, mainly the co-op, about it, but certainly other businesses being very in favor of anything that draws traffic to them. So I imagine that'll be a lot of the sorting out of the committee's goals and dialogue with the business owners. So Scott, I don't know if you're still wanting to hold this off, or if we want to revisit the motion to move to action, or wait and talk with Miranda about more than two people on a.
We can just bring it back next month. That's absolutely fine. I just felt like it needed to be included this month because we were talking about budget actions with regard to Riverwalk, and I didn't think it would be appropriate to talk about it without a committee or anything. So I just wanted to get us all moving in that direction. So I'm happy to work to bring something back next month.
Makes sense. Thank you, Kate.
I like that idea. Thank you, Kate.
Okay. Well, sounds like that's coming back next month. And that was it for discussion items. And is there any other business that we want to discuss? I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Good night,
Thank you.
everyone.
Everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Aye.